right, let's get to it. Let's get to my Tour de Cancer story. Here's stage 2. I'm going to call it surgery. And we last left off where I was officially diagnosed with an epithelioid sarcoma in my groin. And here's what happened next. Because the sarcoma tumor was very close to, how do I put this? The base of my penis. Not the tip, but the base, like way down there. It was bumping up against it. And very delicate position that could really cause a lot of problems for me. So my oncologist sent me to a surgeon to look over my scans and decide how or if we're even going to do surgery. So that's weighing on my mind, as you can imagine. And I alluded to this in the last video, the time it takes to actually get things done and going from here to there, and it is just agonizing. And that's a criticism I'm going to levy against the healthcare industry or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'm walking around with what I consider a time bomb in my groin, and it just seems like there's no sense of urgency. You know, I spent weeks getting to this referral to meet with this oncologist cancer surgeon, and when I get there, he's just kind of looking at the scans for the first time. He decides he's not the one to do the surgery. It's not his level of expertise on where this thing is located. So he refers me to another surgeon, which I then have to make an appointment with, go see. Now, I'm glad he did in hindsight, because Dr. Martin Fleming ended up being my surgeon, and thank God he was. So now I go through that process, I get everything approved, months go by, and I'm on the table to finally get surgery, which was my first surgery ever. Never even had a broken bone. Now, I've crashed a lot in bike races. I've had a lot of road rash, as they call it, but I've never been under the knife. But honestly, I wasn't nervous. I was actually counting down the weeks, days, because I couldn't wait to get this thing out of me. So I got the surgery, cut this thing out of me. And in my mind, I'm like, whew, thank God, you know, I should be good now. At least hoping. But it was a relief to finally get to this point where I feel like, all right, we finally done something. I'm not going to hold back too much on this series. There's a lot of nasty things after the surgery. Like, I had a tube coming out of my thigh that I would have to drain. It was like a pump that would drain all the infection out of the area where I had surgery. And I would have to have this thing sticking out of my thigh until it got to the point where it wasn't draining anymore. And unfortunately for me, that lasted several weeks. Much like cycling, and this is where I started to come up in my mind that this was the Tour de Cancer, because in cycling, I've done tours. I've done what's called the Tour of the Future, where it was a 5-day stage race. So I was looking at it as like, okay, here's a stage, here's a stage. So I was kind of compartmentalizing each hurdle of this race in my mind. And I was like, okay, surgery. Okay, this, that, the other. Let's get through this phase. Let's get through this stage as unscathed as I can possibly be, knowing that it sucks. But much like a bike race, there are times when you feel like you're ready to quit. There are times when your body is maxed out, you're breathing super hard, your lactic acid's burning, and you're fighting through it. and you get through it, and then you're feeling good again in the same race. You die 1,000 deaths, so to speak. And I just kind of looked at this journey now like that, and some of the anxiety of what I mentioned before as far as Googling and WebMD and all that subsided a little bit, because at least I knew I had a plan, and this thing's gonna get cut out of me, and then we'll go from there. So after a couple of weeks, I go back to meet Dr. Fleming so he can tell me how officially the surgery went, because they send off the tissue, they send off the tumor, they do some labs on it, and they determine more things about it. I mean, they already knew it was epithelioid sarcoma, but they didn't know how serious it was. They grade tumors like a high grade, low grade, mid grade. So I was going to find all this out when I went back post-surgery. So I get there, and I'm thinking this could be my final stage as far as this whole cancer thing that I've been dealing with for the last several months. And unfortunately, that was not the case. He told me that the tumor was a high grade, meaning it was very high risk, high activity tumor. And on top of that, he said that the tissue surrounding the tumor, that tissue tested for cancer. On top of that, he said he left some of it in because he couldn't get it all out. It was too close to, once again, the base of my penis. So it all starts all over again. Need to find out if I can have surgery again. He is willing to do it, but he would like to have a urologist with him assisting in the second attempt to go in there, get more of that tissue out that had cancer cells in it, and get the rest of the tumor out. So let's start the nightmare all over again. Now I have more things to worry about. My wife's pregnant. Surgery was unsuccessful. I don't even know if surgery's going to work again. There's a lot to think about, in addition to whether surgery is even an option for me. On top of that, I post-surgery got what is called a PET scan, which basically you go through a tube and you're injected with a chemical of some sort that will light up if there's any cancer in your body. And unfortunately, it lit up in places that were not where the tumor was. I had now cancer in my lymph node, which was on the right side, about, 5 inches above where the tumor was. So now I have cancer in my lymph nodes, which is the highway to your bloodstream. So it metastasized. I'm going to end stage 2 here. Had a bad race, had a bad stage, lost some time. I got to make it up on stage 3. So stay tuned for stage 3. Strap on your helmet. Like I said, this is a crazy ride, and we are just scratching the surface, friends. So check your lumps, and I'll see you at the starting line for stage 3. Thanks for all the comments, and I'll talk to you soon.